I'm ready.
Welcome, folks, to today's, actually one of our final presentations for 2019 for the Neon One Partner Positives webinar series, which celebrates the larger Neon One ecosystem. Really excited about today's presentation. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, on the next screen, a little bit about who Neon One is. With one more click, we're going to also see that beautiful spaceship. Thank you very much, Ellen. And so Neon One, if you're not aware, is a technology and services ecosystem that serves mission-driven organizations like yours. We do this in a wide variety of ways. On the next screen, we'll see the services and items that we actually provide folks like you. The Neon One ecosystem is made up of a few different core products. NeonCRM, which is going to get a little bit of a spotlight later on after Ellen's presentation. But we also have Civicor, which does not only giving days, such as Giving Tuesday, yesterday, powering a lot of that, but client case management for back-end program management. So pretty interesting kind of spread from fundraising all the way to back-end. Rallybound does amazing peer-to-peer campaigns, digital fundraising, things of that sort. And then Arts People is specific to arts and cultural institutions like small theaters. Neon One also provides web design services, but where the ecosystem really kicks into gear is that we curate the entire experience around our software integrations as well as consultants. So it actually matters, and it actually is vetted to say that someone is a Neon One partner. You can check out a full list of partners by going to neon1.com, and we have a nice partner directory. And in that directory, you will see Ellen Bristol. And so consultants like Ellen have been certified by our company. They go through a training program to make sure that they understand the products. And those products have helped raise $11 billion to date, $1.75 billion this year alone, serving more than 35,000 nonprofits. So pretty excited, but we can't do and help folks without our partners. So final housekeeping items before I hand it on over to Ellen is that, yes, this is currently being recorded. We will be putting it up on the Partners YouTube channel. And we're going to be following up with some information. Ellen's got some great resources that she's going to have a slide on, but we'll be making sure to get in your hands. And then we'll be able to follow up too if you're interested in learning more about NeonCRM, for instance, or wanting the recording. I'm pretty darn excited for today's presentation. We're officially in end of the year time. 31% of gifts come in during this month. And because of that, it's very critical to ensure that the board members, for instance, are driving decisions with data and not their gut. So that's what we're going to be unpacking today. So Ellen, I'm going to hand it on over to you. And yes, we will be taking questions and things of that nature as well. So there's
terrific. And Tim, you're going to manage any questions that come our way.
Yep, I'm the MC for today, and other than that, we're going to stop seeing my face. So
great. Hi, everybody. Well, Tim already introduced me by name. I founded Bristol Strategy Group. Our logo just says Bristol Strategy because it's too big a mouthful. Back in '95, and our focus has always been on fundraising effectiveness. So when Tim and I first started to plan this webinar, he asked me, you know, the standard question, so Ellen, what do you want to talk about? And I said, you know, it's the end of the year. It's the time when this big chunk, 31%, as Tim said, of all gifts land in our checking accounts. And even if it's not the end of your fiscal year, we're all starting to figure out how to do things either differently or better next year than we did this year. And frankly, we need to ask ourselves, not just have we been successful, but how do we know? So Tim said, yeah, board member opinions don't count. So let's ask that question again. How do you know you've been successful this year? You probably don't really know. many times have you been either an observer or the subject of one of those being called before the board to give a report experiences, and what starts out as a positive kind of turns into a negative because your audience is asking miserable questions like, why didn't you? Or even worse, why did you? Instead of looking at your cumulative performance against specific criteria and saying, fantastic here, needs improvement there. Well, why do they do that? I think we need to recognize something. As tempting as it might be to give the board a bad rap, it's not their fault either, because they're not really sure how to measure your performance. When we don't know how to measure people's performance, we fall back onto one of two things. Did the money, and this is in the fundraising arena, did we make enough money? And did we like you? Or something like that. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, and Tim mentioned another one of our certified Neon partners, Charlotte and Gail, talked about the fact that we don't really do a very good job of capturing meaningful metrics that the metrics geeks and the performance management geeks, and I am the queen of them, would refer to as diagnostic. In other words, they really tell you something. In fact, what we do measure is often irrelevant, but easy to capture, like how much activity you had. So we do things a little bit differently in our consultancy. We don't look so much at donor data. I mean, we do look at a lot of donor data, but we're really focused on the capacity of the fundraising team to do the job right. One of the reasons it's really difficult for you and your board to know if you've been successful or not is because key evidence of success is often missing in action. Let me just give you these three statistics. Since about 2011, my firm has been running a long-term study of fundraising team capacity or productivity, the capacity to be productive, I should say, called the Leaky Bucket Assessment. And the cumulative data shows that only 66% of all of our respondents, there are 1,400 respondents, so we feel it's statistically viable. Only 66% or so of nonprofits even have an income goal and track progress against that goal. And for those who bring in income from a variety of funding streams, major donors, events, grants, corporate philanthropy, a little under half of them track income by funding stream to the goal for that stream. So if you don't have a target to compare your performance against, you really don't know if you've been successful. What I find really troubling is that nearly 84% of our sample, our database, failed to have a documented ideal donor profile that includes giving motivations, which means something that I know Tim is really interested in, like, are we choosing to pursue or invest time and effort into donors who are right for us, donors who meet our standards for motivation and capacity, and who lack danger signs, as we like to call them. So if about 84% don't have such criteria, that means an awful lot of those nonprofits, their fundraising teams are at risk for wasting enormous amounts of time and energy and money pursuing prospects who are DOA. You know, they're dead on arrival. And the cost of that time just mounts and mounts and mounts. Now, you remember, everybody, I told you I was a performance management geek. You can get a PhD in performance management, but here goes Ellen Bristol's 4 laws of performance management. If you understand and memorize these, I'll give you my own PhD. So the first law is you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So as I said, how are you being measured? What metrics define your success? And don't forget, a metric isn't just what you measure. It includes something called a success target. Retain more donors is what you're measuring. Upgrade retention rates by 25% is your performance target. So, and you've all heard this phrase, you can't manage it if you can't measure it. Easy for me to say. The second law is a little more obscure, but I wish more people understood it. What you measure is what you get. So if you tell your team, or if you've been told, you're a fundraising professional, I'm going to measure the number of phone calls or face-to-face visits or grant applications you push out the door, guess what you're going to get? Lots of phone calls, lots of donor visits, lots of grant applications. Those things those measure activity, not results. You really want to be measuring results. In the fundraising arena, what are those results? Improved donor retention rates, improved total income, improved average gift size, improved number of transactions per month, and so on. The third law is, again, a little more sophisticated. You can't figure out much by using a single measurement. We wouldn't go out and build a house if the only measurement we had was for the bathroom window. We'd have to figure out what other measurements would create a house that would stand up and not fall down. And the same thing is true for us in fundraising performance. We have to look at a variety of things. And this law number 3, is very closely related to law number 4. If the only thing you measure happens after the process is complete, you just can't learn anything about the process. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know about Tim and his experience both in the nonprofit sector and serving nonprofits, but I think what most organizations rely on is income in the door. So that flunks the 4 laws of performance management 2 ways. First of all, it's a single measure. And second of all, you can't count up the income in the door until after the process of obtaining that income has been completed. So from a performance management perspective, we want to have, law number 4 refers to what are called trailing indicators, stuff that you can only recognize or diagnose or interpret after the fact. We want to be able to track leading indicators. Those are measurable things that happen in the early stages of the gift acquisition, if I can call it that, process, or in the middle of the process. So I wanted to lay the groundwork for why it's so hard to understand whether or not you've been successful. Oh, by the way, even if your board manager's opinion is you're doing a great job, you owe it to yourself to ask, by what standards am I doing a great job? And that enhances your professionalism. Now, managing performance requires 4 functions. They all sort of work in concert with one another. If I'm going too fast, or if you want more, there is a question. Tim, can you take a look at that?
Absolutely. So can you talk a little bit more detail about the capacity of the fundraising team?
I'm happy to do that. I'm going to leave this slide here. We look at the capacity of the fundraising team in terms like the following. How many people do we have to have on our team to reach our critical goals and objectives in the fundraising department? And if we have, I'll just take the number 3. If we have 3 people on the team, excuse me, everybody. Let's say we have 3 people on the team and we're able to raise $1 million, which means that each person on the team is somehow raising 1/3 of that $1 million. What happens if we want to raise $2 million? Do we need to get 6 people on our team? Or could we expand the capacity of our fundraising professionals so that each member of the team can raise not $333,000, but $400,000 or $500,000. So maybe we could get by with adding only 1 person. So team capacity has to do with its ability to be highly productive. That was a really good question, and I'm glad somebody asked it. You're the first one to ask that question. We can't just keep throwing people at the problem. And as we all know, we can get our volunteers and board members to contribute an awful lot. To fundraising, not just giving us their money. But what we have to do is figure out how much our people can do for us without getting distracted, without having guidance from our plans and our key performance indicators, and without the kind of management resources and support, the technology, the coaching, the professional development, and so on, that makes all members of the fundraising team able to do better work, raise more income with less effort. Would somebody acknowledge that that made sense? I'd really appreciate some feedback to see if that my answer answered your question.
That made sense, yes.
Yay! All right, now you have a PhD from the University of Illinois. Okay, so back to where I was here. And you know, that question was a really good intro to what we're talking about here. There are 4 components, as I was saying, of performance management. There's leading, which means setting direction and inspiring others to follow. That's the most basic definition that I've ever come up with. Then there's managing. Management isn't necessarily doing the work, it's making sure the work gets done. And most desirably, managing means making sure the work gets done to defined standards. Standards of productivity, standards of integrity, standards of ethics, and so on. The next part of managing the team's performance is that of holding the team accountable. You can't hold the team accountable unless somehow in the organization your performance expectations have been documented. It's not desirable to bring on a new fundraising team member and say, go and do your best. Here's your employee handbook. Here's your parking space. There's your desk. Go at it. And 6 months later, that person comes back and says, so what have you done for me lately? Right? We don't want that. We want to have clarity. Clarity eliminates confusion, or certainly reduces it. So accountability requires that you document expectations and track progress, because sometimes expectations are set improperly or can't be met because of circumstances beyond one's control, in which case we come to the fourth component of managing performance, which is correcting course. Course correction is critical. If you've been in the world of nonprofit work for more than the past 5 minutes, you know that things change pretty quickly. So we have to make it a habit to take those performance expectations and progress tracking and analyze and interpret the data so that we can modify the plan. We modify the behavior. Sometimes we modify the expectations. We look at things like whether or not this particular set of messaging is producing the kind of responses we're looking for from our audience. We threw an event. How many people came? Did they fail to show up because we sent them a bad message? I don't mean we sent them the wrong day and the wrong address for the event. I mean, we didn't send them a message that hit them in the heart and made them want to participate. So now we go to some examples of leading, managing, holding accountable, and correcting course. This example comes slightly modified from a client of ours who's a Habitat for Humanity affiliate in a rural and quite poor part of the country. And for years now, there's been, until the current CEO took over, there was, I don't know what was going wrong, but the last year before the current CEO came on board, they managed to build one Habitat home. And the CEO has decided to challenge everybody by creating what's called a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. He looked at some state statistics from his state that said in their coverage area, 27% or more of the local population can't afford decent housing. So they're either paying 40, 50, 60% of their income to keep a roof over their heads, which means they can't pay for a whole lot of other things, or they're couch surfing, or they're in and out of motels and shelters and living in their cars and so on. They call this population cost burdened. And instead of creating a target for how many houses or how many apartment units get rehabbed, they said, why don't we go big and give ourselves 5 years to reduce that percentage of the cost burden population by X percent. They're going for 5% in 5 years. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it accounts for hundreds of households. Their year one achievement, they've been able to reduce the target population by 0.75%, or 3/4 of a percentage point. Now, that might sound low to you and me, but remember, year one was a year that they had to put the foundation of this plan in place. So cleverly, the whole employed team of this affiliate has a short-term mission, or a very strategic goal of reducing the cost burdened population in their territory by a specific amount and a specific time. And if they produce in line with those targets, they'll have been successful. Now, in keeping with the notion that leading is only part of it, remember, you can't just use a single measurement. Let's look at the question of managing the way the work gets done to standards. So they created a 5-year objective. Acquire enough capital, or commitments of capital, or access to capital, to finance so many affordable housing units. In Habitat's case, that doesn't just mean building one-family homes. It means neighborhood revitalization, rehabbing affordable apartment buildings, and so on. And one key performance indicator is to acquire a certain number of millions of dollars, again, acquire it or get commitments for it by loans or grants or you name it, to acquire the rights to the land and everything they'll need to do to conduct all the construction necessary. They're ahead of the curve. Now, let's talk about holding the team accountable. What I'm showing you is just a little bit of a NeonCRM custom object that Bristol Strategy Group has developed. It's a companion to our flagship methodology, Fundraising the SMART Way, and we call this KPIs the SMART Way. It's just recently been introduced. It's still in prototype form, but what this shows you is a way to document just a third of what we call this a scorecard, what the real prospect scorecard looks like. So if you can see over here, this specific individual has a rank of A. Well, donors with a rank of A are most likely to provide high lifetime value. And how do we determine that? I won't bore you with how it works, but we identify the critical characteristics of the ideal donor's motivations for giving. This example is for a botanical garden. And besides what you're seeing here, the statements are standard for a specific type of funder. Here's how important those criteria are. Here's how the prospect compares to those criteria, and here's the weighted score. And there are 2 other categories, facts and whether or not there are danger signs or objections. So this particular individual ranked A, and that means a fundraising professional should be investing a lot of time, maximum effort. Let me just go back here one quick second. In other words, we want to make sure the fundraising team has the capacity to pay attention to very well qualified donors with lots of indicators that they're going to provide, that they're going to produce high lifetime value for your charity, your nonprofit. And so you won't waste time investing 25 hours to get a gift of $250, and you have to drive 100 miles each way to pick up the blankety blank check. Here's another way to hold your team accountable. This is another example from our custom object. Set performance targets for how much income, this is cumulative income for an entire organization. And you'll also see we compare the actual income and percent of attainment to the income side of this little spreadsheet. But you'll also notice we're all very well aware at Bristol Strategy that if you want to raise $30 million or $100,000, you better have more than 30 million or 100,000 worth of opportunity in your pipeline, you know, that checklist of potential giving. So we put it in at a basis, on the basis of the pipeline target needs to be 3 times the income target until you have enough historical data to say you only need 2.5 times the income target, or maybe you need to raise it to 4 times the income target. So we're always comparing target to actual and everywhere, so we know where we're falling down on the ground. We're now talking about correcting course. Analyzing and interpreting data and correcting course. And feel free to chime in here, Tim. This client is one of ours. They're a Neon user. They're also a Rally-bound user. And I like the Neon dashboard because it doesn't just say, here's the rate, or here's the average, or here's the data with no context. It says, here's the average, it went down. That's interesting. Here's the average gift size, it went down. That's very interesting. And donor retention rate has improved, and donor, which was it that I was looking for? New donor acquisition rate has improved significantly, and so on and so forth. So, Tim, we can look at this on in real time, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I actually got some of the dashboards queued up because somebody had asked a question. We got another question that I'm going to ask live after we wrap things up.
Great.
But yeah, when we're ready, we can actually dive into a live Neon system to see not just this dashboard, but to answer the other person's question of like, how do we apply some of the concepts that you were talking about?
Oh, excellent.
Today?
Excellent. Yeah. So the point here is Neon is doing some of the analysis for you. And in fact, even some of the interpretation. When you're looking at performance numbers, you always want to ask this question. I wish I could say I invented it. You want to ask, can I read the story the numbers are telling me? And you better be able to do that. So I'm very high on the way this dashboard works, and I'm hoping we can figure out a way to get some of our custom object elements into a dashboard like this. So here's a quick summary of how to set the stage for knowing whether you've been successful or not. Leadership drives management. Management drives accountability. Accountability depends on expectations. And analyzing, interpreting data, and correcting course maintains focus on the big stuff that matters. So I want to summarize a few things here. Whether you're on the board or not, the board and the CEO and the head of the development team must set strategic goals. Again, like our friends at Habitat, it's not how much activity you do, how many proposals you send, how many phone calls you make, how many peer fundraising events you attend. It's, are you making an impact on your mission? Then they owe it to the fundraising team to establish key performance indicators with success targets. You and they need to be able to compare plan to actual, because you must, in order to evaluate performance, you have to use evidence, data that tells you how well you've been performing. There's an art to this. It's everything that we're all about in our company, and it's why we built Fundraising the SMART Way methodology. Now, here's what you and your board should avoid. Don't measure activity, measure results. I made 75,000 million jillion phone calls. How many people did you speak to? Oh, 3. Okay, something's wrong there. Don't tolerate a lack of teamwork and a lack of trust. Well, I would be doing a much better job if those guys over there would just do their work. Pardon me for being a meanie here, but the internal sniping that might be occurring, or I hope nobody on a board is listening to me, of the board or the leadership demonstrating a lack of trust to the team or vice versa. Those things are very subtle, but stuff has to happen to make sure it's avoided as much as possible. And from a performance management perspective, you must not focus only on trailing indicators. Now, I want you all to learn more about our methodology, Fundraising the SMART Way, which these days includes KPIs the SMART Way. P.S. We don't let anybody acquire that custom object unless they've been trained in the methodology. And you can learn a whole lot about Fundraising the SMART Way and about KPIs the SMART Way on our website. By the book that I wrote, it was published by in the AFP Wiley Fund Development Series a few years back. Get our freebies from us and schedule a call with me. And this is the stuff that I'm going to share with you later on in the follow-up. So, Tim.
Yes.
Wanted to say a few things.
Yeah, I just want to take a few minutes to apply some of the concepts that we talked about today. For instance, somebody had asked, what is this available yet? The custom objects, as Ellen mentioned, is something that can be implemented with kind of her oversight and your firm's oversight. But the really cool thing is that, and I'm going to show this, the KPIs dashboard is, let me just get this going. This is a live Neon system. This has not been configured to have anything special in it or anything like that. So the dashboard itself is actually available already. So you'd be able to see all this stuff. And let's say you have your own internal KPIs that you decide to focus on, that maybe you don't need all of these. These are actually the ones that, we didn't make these up. This is actually from direct oversight from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is an initiative of AFP, Urban Institute, us, and Bloomerang and Donor Perfect all contribute data and analyze these things, but we're the only platform that's built in every single one of the key performance indicators into Neon without you having to do any work. So Personally, I love looking at things like growth in giving, retention rate, and average gift size. This is a demo database, so we're doing pretty darn fantastic, but we hope that you can also reach those types of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Some other practical dashboards when it comes to prospect engagement are the prospect forecast. So it's not going to be as detailed as Ellen's custom object, for instance, but it is going to give you some buckets that you can quickly look at and then use something like this portfolio or prospect management dashboard. Again, all of this is standard in NeonCRM. And there's some cool things that we've actually just added when it comes to even updating this. I just told Ellen this and she got really excited, is we redesigned the ability for you to even update your activities. So I can actually update the statuses of activities in bulk now in NeonCRM. So this is new. This came out just a few weeks ago. But one of the practical things, let's actually look at somebody that, and then get Ellen's kind of quick take on what do we do with this person, right? So let's practically apply and do kind of a live little case study on Juliet here. And notice we do have some notes on the record too, in terms of there's a donated painting, and then it looks like some biographical information on her. So, just looking at this right here, Ellen, what do you see that strikes you about Juliet here?
Well, first of all, I want to send her a note. Don't drink out of that little bottle. So she's the CEO of a foundation. She's young, but not so young that, she's in that right age bracket to be at the peak of her professional career, and she's probably got some substantive wealth. You can just tell that right away. She's got, does this mean she's a board member and a donor and a researcher and all these things?
She's pretty highly engaged, and
so that's super, because that tells us a lot about her level of engagement.
And even going over to the timeline, which is going to be like a good summary of all the things that she's done. She's getting emails, she's doing checks, there's levels of appreciation.
This is really useful. So now that I know that she's highly engaged, I know something about some generalizations about her demographics. Mm-hmm. And the frequency with which she makes modest donations, I would...
Yeah, let's just filter on donations, actually.
Yeah, let's do that.
Maybe pledges too. Maybe we filter on those.
Let's look at both of those things. So I would love to set up a workflow in Neon, which I actually know how to do.
Because you're certified.
Which says something like, donors whose cumulative giving in 1 year reaches X level, send a task to Ms. Snow, who is managing.
And if you're not aware of the workflows feature, just go over to tools and click on that. It's one of the coolest things that we've ever put out.
It lays out step by step what you have to remember to do, but then it does it for you. Mm-hmm. Send her an email, send a reminder to the gift officer who owns Juliet's relationship.
So let's even click off the donations and see what activities that we have. So it's okay, we got completed statuses, but looks like it's got we've even added these notifications for like, hey, this is something that we should be paying attention to. It hasn't been started yet.
And in this case, I would say
high priority,
high priority, and see if we can convert her from a transactional giver to a some form of major gift.
Yeah.
That whatever our level is of major giving, maybe we want to convince her to stop making one at a time gifts to various campaigns and say, well, heck, I'm going to give you $2,500 a year and you can debit my account every month for a portion.
Expected $20 recurring donation schedule. And what's kind of cool is, especially if you can get this type of recurring engagement set up, Neon Pay, if the credit card expires, will actually automatically hunt out and update that registration.
Oh,
pretty nifty stuff.
That's
and that's like built in. So that's just a few things. Let's actually well, actually, okay, so one, I want to make sure that we get to some of these questions. So while I'm setting up, somebody's asking about workflow, so I'm going to kind of showcase that. But before I dive into that, these are kind of related, so I'm potentially going to combine them. Somebody's asking about advice for a team of one, and then another one is about cost-effective services or ways to receive donor profiles and giving motivations. It's almost like, in a way, they're kind of related in terms of like, I'm a small shop, and I need to be very cognizant of my resource allocation.
100%. And I'd like to address that question with you, Tim, because we've dealt with a surprising number of smaller organizations, and we have some solid answers.
So yeah, I mean, so small shop, what would you do in that case to make sure that you're doing something there?
What I saw in the Juliet profile looked like there was a lot of work and a lot of engagement and a reasonably high productive, high capacity. So we already know she's engaged, which means she matches the right motivations. And we already know she's giving at a such and such level. Why not reduce, this is staff fundraising capacity, have a conversation and say, why don't we put you in our, wonderfulness giving circle, and you just tell us how you want us to apply your gifts or whatever, and we'll do it all automatically. So from now on, whenever you hear from me, it's for you and me to go out and have a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, not to bug you for money. So we can set up a coffee date. We can remind the gift officer to have some collateral at hand, or to have some some talking points that make a useful something of interest that'll encourage Juliet to move in the direction we'd like her to move.
Well, and it's about tailoring. What's nice about workflows in this case too is that and this is the thing about like automation, right? That I think people get scared about is like, well, it means I'm not personalizing anything. And it's actually what you do is once you have your process set, that it's like when I was at my last job as an annual fund manager, like I had a Postit note on my, here, I'll go ahead and share my, let's shift out. Okay, I'm just going to kind of shift into into talking mode.
All right.
So it was like when I was at my last job, I was an annual fund manager, and I had my sheet that said, okay, whenever somebody hit $1,000 donation cumulatively or individually for the year, make sure that the development director called that person. 5,000 would be set up a lunch with the head of school.
With the head of the school, right.
All that type of stuff, right?
Well, we already know a Postit note becomes invisible after the first 3 days.
Exactly. And all automation does, because I think it's something like 86% of nonprofit professionals with the study by Opportunity Knox, which is basically they're analyzing HR in the nonprofit industry. And it struck me that, like, I think it was something like 86% of people say that they're performing duties outside of their job description.
Right.
Okay. So when you're talking about what do we do for a shop of one, the reality is that you're wearing many hats. You might even be the chief everything officer of your nonprofit, where you're like, I'm balancing the books and I'm doing all the outreach and I'm running the
playing
Facebook
the games
page
with the children. Exactly.
And that's we're overworked. And the thing that I always stress when it comes to what we are talking about here at the end of the day is we need to empower you with the data so you can advocate for yourself and not only keep your job, but make more money, right?
Precisely.
Everybody's talking about overhead. Everybody's talking about that. And I always end, anytime I do a presentation on KPIs, I've done workshops and things like that, I literally go down and go, you see this KPI? You see this amount that you've raised? You go to the board, you go to your ED, and you advocate for a raise because you deserve it. And
I couldn't agree more.
That's the other element. You're not just helping grow your mission, which is, of course, the point of why you're doing all of this, but charity isn't, it's still a job.
It begins at home.
Exactly.
The other thing about automation in this regard is that there are an awful lot of tasks that we do, like your famous Postit Note story. Yep. The cost of doing those tasks is, if a human did it, that's a $10 an hour job.
Mm-hmm.
So if automation can do those pick up, clean up, fix up jobs for you in a fraction of a second at an immeasurably small cost.
Yep.
Why aren't you using them? Because if you're the chief everything officer, you're also the chief schmoozing officer, the chief showing up at networking events officer, and all of that other stuff. And I'm sorry, you can't be cultivating major donors at 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
And you're not going to have the energy for it, and you're not going to have
you'll burn out, you'll hate the sector, and you'll go to work for a telemarketer.
And the final point here is that kind of the reason that Neon 1 exists when it comes to all this stuff, not just NeonCRM, is that we're trying to put together these tools that make sense as a collective. So we, for instance, not only working with folks like Ellen to put on amazing content like this, but then designing integrations with something like Roger Craver's True Givers, which is going to be doing automatic NCOA updates nightly for your organization, as opposed to you having to go outsource to a mail house. If you're doing things in-house, which a lot of small nonprofits have to do, then instead of waiting for that stack to come back because 11% of Americans move each year, this thing is going to be automatically and then you're manually entering the new address, and you're going to do that 3 weeks after the mailing or whatever. This is just going to do it for you. And we've tested this stuff, and these are things that we're trying to curate it, because when you're a small shop, even when you're a large shop, we had a $10 million capital campaign at the last job I worked before Neon. It was I worked in a mansion, for goodness sakes, right? Yeah. And I was still doing things manually. I had to literally walk over to another building and up 3 flights of stairs in order to enter credit cards into a banking machine, and then walk back and enter it into the database that we had. You shouldn't have to do that. And that's the whole point. I'm going to get off my soapbox.
Well, I want to say something else here about small shops. We have had, as long as I've been working in this industry, a kind of ongoing battle between the board and the staff. Who's supposed to do the fundraising? Well, it's the board's job. No, it's the staff's job. No, it's the board's job. No, it's the staff job. We end up with nobody doing the job. And then at the end of the year, we're all crying in our beer because we didn't reach our goals. Mm-hmm. There is a way to recruit board and staff to do one of the most important jobs that in small shops almost invariably falls to the bottom of the priority pile, which is, ta-da, donor retention. Whose stewardship is very labor intensive. Mm-hmm. At the very least, it means that every single person who gave you a gift, even if it's just 4 quarters taped to a piece of cardboard, gets a live phone call from somebody saying, I'm a board member, committee member, donor of my favorite, the Institute for the Bewildered, and I'm calling to thank you and give you a little update. Oh, you don't want me to give you more money? No. It's thanks to people like you we're able to do what we do. Isn't it wonderful? Kissy, kissy, huggy, huggy.
So
Not as simple as that, but
we do have 2 questions. I want to
let's get those answered.
Yes.
Great.
So somebody had asked in Neon, can you track where the donation goes? Absolutely. And actually, we have, if you're using QuickBooks, for instance, we have a fully certified sync. So you can
Fabulous.
Designate that into class. Again, you're curating the ecosystem, right? And I'm obsessive about designations, right? Because capital campaigns need that. So you can map to classes, you can map to funds, you have campaign designations, and these are all standard fields that can be automated. Somebody asked about getting, wait, we got mood lighting going on, Ellen? Looks like your lighting went a little dark, by the way. You still there? All right. Folks, we might have lost Ellen for the last part of our presentation. So what I'm going to do is answer, actually, somebody had asked about importing data. So we do have an import tool. If you go to our support center, you'd be able to just type import and find that. I mistakenly was going to answer that live. And then in terms of, I'll answer this one. In terms of being able to utilize the CRM if the ED is not doing it, I'll talk about that one real quick. Unfortunately, it looks like we lost Ellen, but that's the magic of the internet. We are recording this, so we'll be able to kind of engage anything afterwards, so let us know. But yeah, if the ED's not using the CRM, I mean, it's one of those things that making sure that they at least know the reports and the KPIs and doing data review with them, even if they're not touching it, that's fine. Like, you know, if you set up a process where you're entering the activities on their behalf or things like that, Neon has some really cool sharing features where the person doesn't even have to log into the CRM to actually see the report. So that's a cool feature. And you can email that internally using a workflow, for instance. And then we also do have, that's my daughter right here, but we do have a fancy app that is kind of like a very optimized version of Neon called Neon Moves, and then they could take it on the go. And I know a lot of EDs love doing that. And then you can enter activities, and it's very easy to use that, so that it's actually bringing the data into them. So it's a nice premium app. If you're interested in that, definitely let us know. So out of respect for today and time, and sorry that we lost Ellen, I want to thank everyone for attending today. We're entering into a very, very busy time of the year, and I want to wish all of you an amazing, amazing end of the year. And just be cognizant of your own health. Take care of yourself, take care of your staff, take care of your organization's mission, and thank you very much for attending today. Hope you got a lot out of it, and we'll talk to you soon.